Home is behind, the world ahead, and there are many paths to tread, through shadow to the edge of night, until the stars are all alight. Mist and shadow, cloud and shade, all shall fade, all shall.
I'm going to retell the story of how I got onto the pole shift in the first place. I've told this story before. I made a 2.5 hour video, but it was 3 years ago. I was a lot younger then, and I didn't know how to express myself as well. So I'm going to start again and try to make it as comfortable as possible for your ears to listen to. So simply, I was given a vision. Now, I always tell people this, and immediately they'll write it off in their minds by saying, oh, he had a dream or something like that. No, I did not have a dream. I was awake and I was conscious. Just as I'm talking to you now, I had the same consciousness. It was 11 p.m. at night in September 2019. I was lying down on my couch with my hands behind my head, and I was just staring at my roof. And I was in such a relaxed state. I was very alone and it was very quiet. And everything changed. Everything changed right in front of me. All of a sudden, it was 11 p.m. at night, but suddenly it changed to daylight. Night turned to day, and I could see water everywhere. I could see it right in front of me. And when I looked up at my roof, I could see through my roof. I could see through my roof, and I could see that I was underneath the water at the bottom of this ocean, about 40 meters deep. And I could see the sun reflecting off of the water at the surface. And I remember seeing the waves gently moving at the top of the surface. And it was so gentle, I thought, gee, this isn't a flood or a tsunami or anything. This is a still ocean. Like, it's happy and calm where it is. And I knew it was ocean because it had that greenish blue hue to it that only oceans have. And so I could see the sun reflecting off the surface of the water. I could see the sunlight shining down through the water. And I thought, gee, this is incredible. You know, everything has just changed, and I can see water everywhere, and I was calm. This is an important note to say, because some people will suggest to me, oh, maybe it was just aliens or demons or something. But if it was something out there with a nefarious intention, I would have not felt calm. I would have felt afraid, but I didn't feel anything. I was completely neutral. I was so calm. In fact, I was in wonder. I was like, this is amazing. I'm like, what am I seeing right now? Like, one second I was in my house, the next second night turned to day and I'm underwater. And this went on. This vision, the length of this vision was about 10 seconds. It was about 10 seconds, and once I was able to take everything in, suddenly I felt pressure around my throat, and I couldn't breathe, and I started choking. And I was like doing this in real time, and I sat up from the couch immediately because I couldn't breathe. I could feel the pressure of the ocean's depth on my neck, and when I sat up, everything disappeared. And I sat there for like a long time. I was like, that was crazy. I was like, that was fucking crazy. I was like, what does this mean? I'm like, what did I just see? What is this? Because at this point in time, I had no knowledge of what a pole shift was. I'd never heard of a pole shift before. I had no idea about all this potential of the Earth's magnetic excursions, the pole shifts. I didn't know. And so I was so confused, but I never ever had any fear. I never felt afraid, not once. I was calm. I was a bit shocked when I couldn't breathe, but as soon as I sat up, everything disappeared. And you know, I was marveled. And I went to bed that night. I went to bed calm. I went to bed happy. I woke up the next day, and I had forgotten about the vision the night before, you know, because, you know, I just was waking up and getting on with my day, and I had to drive into the shops. And so I went for a drive, and I'm driving at 100 kilometers an hour on a pretty straight road. And then I remembered the vision I had last night. And then as soon as I had that thought, within 1 millisecond of that vision, it happened again in front of me while I'm driving. I saw the water everywhere. I was driving through farmland, and I could see it all out in the fields. And the top of the water was flat, indicating to me that the ocean was still. And I was driving, and I'm looking around, and I'm going, wow, this is amazing. You know, it was daytime when I was driving. It was about 11 a.m. in the morning, and I could just see it all of its glory. I was looking out all over the fields, and I saw all the water, and I said, wow, this is so crazy. You know, I'm driving, and I'm having this vision while I'm driving, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. And I'm just looking out, I'm like trying to see everything, you know, I'm like, I don't want to miss anything. And then the same thing happens again. About 5 to 10 seconds goes by, and I feel the pressure of the water on my throat again, and I'm choking, and I'm like, and then as soon as I gasp for air, everything disappears. And then I'm driving, and I start laughing and smiling. I'm like, this is crazy, man. I'm like, that's crazy, you know. It's like, because having one vision can easily be written off. I could have easily written off that vision to myself. If I had had that experience and didn't have the second one, I would have been like, oh, it was probably nothing, you know, probably just my brain doing something funny, you know, probably just nothing. But the exact same vision happened again the next day after a sleep, and it happened twice. And so I was like, all right, something out there is trying to tell me something. I don't know, to this day, I don't know who was trying to show me that. Some people would call it God, some people would call it angels. Personally, I think what I think that it is I think that it's extraterrestrials, and I think that they have something to do with me. I think that they have something to do with me, and I think that they may have used some technology to show me what was going on. Yes, it could have also been an angel showing me. Yes, it could have been a God, whoever you want to believe in. I'm not knocking back any theories. I don't mind who showed me, because whoever showed me was showing me with neutral intention or with good intention. There was no fear, no anxiety. Whoever was showing me was warning me, and so whoever wants to warn me, they can warn me. I'm open to warnings. I enjoy warnings. If you can tell me something that's going to potentially protect me and my loved ones, I am so willing to hear about it. Anyway, so it's September 2019. I've just had this profound experience, and you know, my entire life changed from this day onward. My entire life changed. Everything changed. There was no going back after this. I had plans to become a billionaire. For those who have known me in real life, they know that I was a very wild businessman for a long time, and I had plans to become a business tycoon. I was really formulating all these ideas. Things were just about to start setting in motion, because in my head I thought, I'm going to be on this planet until I die, which is probably going to be like 80 or 100 years. That was my mindset at the time. And so I was planning to become a business tycoon. I was putting all of my manifesting power into being a billionaire, because I wanted to make the world a better place. I wanted to become a billionaire so that I could make the world as happy as possible, because the world's a fucking mess. And so I had these visions, and then I went on a prophecy chase for the next 6 months. I felt so profoundly connected to something else divine out there after that I knew that I had to keep looking into this further. I had no choice. My entire reality changed. Something out there said, we're going to get this incarnated human on earth, and we're going to change his entire reality before him to show him what's going to happen. And so I started digging, right? And I'm like, all right, I worked out that it was about 40 meters depth. It's a rough guess. But guaranteed it's give or take 10 meters within a 40 meter depth that I saw. So that was my first clue. Well, now what concerned me the most is I was living on my own farm at this point in time, and I lived on the border of Victoria and New South Wales. The problem with this is I was 3.5 hours away from any ocean. So for me to see ocean water 40 meters deep on my farm, which I had bought to be a safe place for me in case anything ever happened, I was shocked. I was shocked and I couldn't figure it out. So the first thing I did was I looked up how high above sea level my farm was. And then I got shocked again because it was only 70 meters above sea level. And I thought, gee, that's crazy. I'm 3.5 hours from any coast and I'm still only 70 meters above the sea. That's pretty weird. And so naturally, I did 70 meters of my elevation plus the 40 meters of the water depth that I observed in my vision, and I added them together and I came to 110 meters. And I went onto Google and I thought, at this time I still wasn't understanding tectonic movements, I wasn't understanding continents sinking or rising, I was just trying to find answers. And so I went onto Google and I typed in, how high would the sea level be if all of the ice on Earth melted? And I can't remember the source that I found, but the answer was 110 meters, which is exactly the equation that I came to. So I'm sitting there at my computer, I'm just shaking my head. I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, this is really crazy. And I thought, all right, so the only way that this water can get here, ocean water, is if all the ice melts. At this point in time, this is 4 years ago, I still knew that global warming was bullshit. I knew 100% in my heart, without a doubt, that global warming was bullshit. So I thought, how the fuck can all the ice on Earth melt if global warming is bullshit? Anyway, I continue going on about my life. A few weeks pass, and by this time, I'm very in touch with my intuition. And I'm now realizing this point in my life was my intuition arc, where I was learning to get in touch with the higher beings and my higher self that were out there guiding me. Because at this point in time, I knew that I didn't have the steering wheel of my own life. I knew that my ego was dumb, that it didn't know what it wanted. I mean, it wanted to be a billionaire. What a retard, right? And that there were things out there guiding me that I should rely on, because they've given me sound information over and over and over again. And so I go to my bookshelf. I have this little mini library. I'd purchased about 80 books without reading any of them, because I had them with the intention that it was going to be my library to read on, just in case anything happened in the world. And so I walked over to my library and I'm trying to hear my intuition, and I'm trying to pick a book out of the shelf, and I just see this book have this little wiggle in the shelf, and I thought, okay, I'm pretty sure that's an intuitive sign, I'm going to follow it. So I grabbed the book out and I start reading the book. It's called Conversations with Nostradamus. And in this book, Nostradamus explains everything about what he calls earth changes, which I've come to now learn is the pole shift. And he explains it thoroughly. And he explains the sea level rise, he explains the earthquakes, the volcanoes and the tsunamis. And this is when I started learning more in depth about everything. So suddenly I had a name to put to it: the pole shift. The poles on Earth were going to shift, and the Earth's crust was going to rotate around the core, and the polar ice caps were going to move from the north and south to the equator, because the north and south ice caps are really, really heavy. It's allegedly the heaviest part of our planet, and so when the crust unlocks and it starts rotating around the core, because we're spinning, the heaviest part of the ball is going to be going towards the equator, where the pressure is the highest, and so the poles are going to flip, and the poles are going to come to the equator. And so there I had my answer. That's where the water was going to come from, and that's how it was going to happen so quickly. The ice caps were going to melt because they were going to be moved into the tropical zones. Because I have a very rational mind, and so I thought to myself, I was shown this vision, which means that this event of the sea level rise must be happening in my lifetime. Otherwise, why would I see it? Why would I be shown it so personally unless it was going to happen in my lifetime? So in my head, I'm thinking, how can the ice melt so fast? Because that's the only way the sea level could rise so much, so far inland. And so I learned that when the polar ice caps go to the equator and they melt in those tropical climates, it can happen very fast, like 10 years fast. And so I thought, okay, so now I've got a whole lot of puzzle pieces to the puzzle. The sea level is going to be 110, 120, 130 meters high above sea level. How long is it going to take for the ice caps to remelt? Because naturally there's going to be the north and south, which is the furthest part away from the sun, and they're going to refreeze. And so I started doing all these crazy mathematics and working out the annual rainfall of the north and south pole, and I converted that to snow and to snow, and then I worked out the equation for snow, for ice cap growth, and I came to the pretty accurate answer that it's 1,000 years. It will take 1,000 years for the ice caps to refreeze to the same as to what they are today. So it will take 1,000 years for the sea level to sink again. So I thought, okay, we're committing to the 120 meter sea level rise. That coastline is going to be pretty solid, and we're not going to see it really move. Once it sets, once the ices melt, we're not going to really see it move in our generation, probably, unless we live for 1,000 years, unless a miracle happens and we live through 1,000 years. So all right, we've got all these things underway, and then we flip over into 2020, the notorious beginning of the pandemic. It's March 2020, and I'm now currently living in Melbourne. I had abandoned all of my billionaire business tycoon ideas because I thought this is not the life that is going to be worth living. I knew in my heart and my soul that this was the truth, and that this was to be what was coming, and that I was going to give up my aspirations to become a multi-billionaire business tycoon. So I decided to live a life of humility and love instead, and I've been traveling in my van for the last 3 years, and I've been on holidays for 5 years. And so March 2020 rolls around. The first lockdowns hit Melbourne. No one's leaving their home. No one knows if it's real or fake at this time, including myself, so everyone's listening, everyone's in their home. But I've always been a bad man, and I've always rejected authority. And so I went and took my bike out to Listerfield Mountain Bike Park and decided to ride around the park, and I drove there and I didn't see a single car on the road. I was the only person in the park, and I thought, this is beautiful, this is peaceful. And I rode halfway around the lake, and I start hearing this shamanic drumming while I'm mid-ride. I'm doing a 22-kilometer bike ride at Listerfield Mountain Bike Track, and I hear this drumming, and I thought, gee, not only is there another person here with me breaking the rules, one of the only people in Melbourne breaking the rules right now, March 2020, but he's bold enough to be playing a drum so loud that I can hear him from kilometers away. And the mountain bike track is around the lake, and so I could hear the drumming traveling over the lake, and I thought, I've got to go to this guy. I'm really feeling like I've got to go and talk to this guy. And he's just drumming, and I'm riding my bike, and it takes me about 15 minutes to get to him, and I hope he doesn't stop drumming, and he doesn't. He was going for hours. And so I finally reach him, and he sees me, and he's relatively unemotional, He's relatively calm. And I said, hey man, and we just started talking, and we were talking for hours, right? I'll pause this story quickly because I forgot an important detail. So I went into the flood map this is where I first found out about floodmap.net. And so I put in 120 meters because I was really studying what the earth was going to look like. And what I saw was that Ferntree Gully was going to be the new coastline. Ferntree Gully is at the bottom of the Dandenong Mountain Range. It's at the beginning of the Great Dividing Range in Victoria. And I saw that Ferntree Gully was going to be the coastline. And I thought, gee, that's pretty funny because I was born in Ferntree Gully. And now it's going to be an ocean and a beachfront. Anyway, fast forward, I'm having a conversation with this guy. And I feel like I want to tell him about my visions and what I've seen. So I do. So I told him about the pole shift and that the sea level is going to rise. And you know what he said to me? He said, my martial arts teacher from 30 years ago told me that the new coastline was going to be in Ferntree Gully. And I was like, oh, I'm just giving myself goosebumps. I was sitting there like, no way. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, getting the visions were crazy, but the amount of confirmations I had in real life following it was absolutely crazy. I mean, for me to type in 110, 120 meters into flood map and see the coastline literally cutting through the middle of French Gully, and then I bump into this guy months later, and then he tells me that his teacher 30 years ago told him that the new coastline was going to be in French Gully. I was like, all right. And that's when I realized that my life was following some kind of divine plan, and that any of my aspirations and desires of the ego did not need to be fulfilled and were not going to be, because I'm on a mission here. Obviously, things have aligned and formed themselves in a way where my purpose has been completely realigned. I'm now of the understanding that I'm here, likely volunteered to be here to be through this experience, but it's clear to me that I'm supposed to have all of this knowledge and be fully ready. That experience I had with the old man, I had them over and over and over again, back to back to back to back to back. So many confirmations, it's not even funny. And that's why I talk about the pole shift as 100% certainty, because the amount of times that the divine plan has happened and the amount of impossibilities, synchronicities that have happened over and over again have verified beyond a reasonable doubt that this is to be what is to come. And so I still don't know who's given me this vision. Sometimes I ask, sometimes I'm sitting there and it comes to me again, the thought of it. And I sit there and I said, who are you? I said, who are you that is so involved in my life right now? Who are you? And I never get an answer. I don't need one. I'm not craving an answer, because what matters is the message. The messenger is irrelevant. To me, to learn the messenger would just be a luxury, because the message is true and the message has pure intention, and so nothing else matters outside of that. But I feel like if they told me who they were, that something would change. Something in the timeline would change to the point where my mission wouldn't be as effective anymore. Because if I knew that I was a part of whatever it is that I'm a part of, that I would then begin wanting to abandon my role here. That's just what I have a feeling of anyway. And it's best that I remain wholeheartedly human for this experience, because I need to be human whilst having this human experience and living amongst all the humans. So yeah, that's that. I'm glad I was able to talk about this in 22 minutes and not 2.5 hours like my other video. There's way more details, there's so much more to this story, but I'm just going to keep all of that to myself, because I've shared the most important parts for now. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm not here to convince anyone of anything, because ultimately your journey has nothing to do with me. And so the people who were meant to hear this will hear this, the people who were meant to survive will survive, and I have no power over that. So I don't care if this reaches only 10 ears. I don't care if only one person is supposed to hear this. It's not up to me, it's not my problem, it's yours.
May it be